Scientists discover that humans have a magnetic sixth sense. By Arjun Walia. It's called magnetoception, and it refers to the ability to perceive magnetic fields. Several animals use it to find their way over long distances by aligning themselves with the Earth's magnetic field. Sea turtles, honeybees, spiny lobsters, dolphins, migratory birds, and more all have a magnetic compass which allows them to use the information that's coded into magnetic fields. We know little beyond that, however. How they use them, how they sense them, and what information they are getting from them remains up for speculation. For all we know, these magnetic fields could be used for much more than navigation for certain species. According to Joe Kirschvink, the geophysicist at the California Institute of Technology who is currently testing humans for a magnetic sense, it's part of our evolutionary history. Magnetoception may be the primal sense. A recent study published by Kirschvink in the journal Nature Communications suggests that a protein in the human retina, when placed into fruit flies, has the ability to detect magnetic fields. The research claims that it can serve as a magnetosensor, but whether or not humans actually use it in this way is unknown. It poses the question, maybe we should rethink about this sixth sense, University of Massachusetts Medical School researcher Stephen Reppard told Live Science. It is thought to be very important for how animals migrate. Perhaps this protein is also fulfilling an important function for sensing magnetic fields in humans. In one of Kirschvink's recent experiments, a rotating magnetic field was passed through study participants while their brain waves were measured. He discovered that when the magnetic field was rotated counterclockwise, certain neutrons responded to this change which, in turn, generated a spike in electrical activity. This suggests a possible magnetic sense in humans. Yet multiple questions still remain. For example, was this neural activity evidence of a magnetic sense or something else? Even if the human brain responds to these fields in some way, that doesn't mean that information is being processed by the brain. There is still the question of what mechanisms are in place within the brain or body that receive these signals. If the body does indeed have magnetoreceptors, where are they? The next step for researchers is to identify them. Kirschvink's study is one of many publications delving into the mysteries of magnetic fields and what impact they have on human beings. The leaders in this area of research will most likely be found at the HeartMath Institute, an internationally recognized non-profit research and education organization dedicated to helping people reduce stress, self-regulate emotions, and build energy and resilience for healthy, happy lives. HeartMath tools, technology, and training teach people to rely on the intelligence of their hearts in concert with that of their minds at home, school, work, and play. Researchers at HeartMath have begun what's called the Global Coherence Initiative, GCI, an international cooperative effort to help activate the heart of humanity and facilitate a shift in global consciousness. It aims primarily to invite people to participate by actively adding more heart-coherent love, care, and compassion into the planetary field. The second focus is scientific research into how we are all energetically connected with each other and the planet, and how we can utilize this interconnectivity to raise our personal vibration and thereby help create a better world. The hypotheses of the researchers and scientists behind this project are as follows. The Earth's magnetic field is a carrier of biologically relevant information that connects all living systems. Every person affects this global information field. Collective human consciousness affects the global information field. Therefore, large numbers of people creating heart-centered states of care, love and compassion will generate a more coherent field environment that can benefit others and help offset the current planetary discord and incoherence. There is a feedback loop between human beings and Earth's energetic, magnetic systems. The Earth has several sources of magnetic fields that affect us all. Two of them are the geomagnetic field that emanates from the core of the Earth and the fields that exist between Earth and the ionosphere. These fields surround the entire planet and act as protective shields blocking out the harmful effects of solar radiation the body emits, communicates with, and is made from light. By Pao Chang. Increasingly science agrees with the poetry of direct human experience. We are more than the atoms and molecules that make up our bodies, but beings of light as well. Biophotons are emitted by the human body, can be released through mental intention, and may modulate fundamental processes within cell-to-cell communication and DNA. Nothing is more amazing than the highly improbable fact that we exist. We often ignore this fact, oblivious to the reality that instead of something there could be nothing at all. That is why is there a universe, poignantly aware of itself through us, and not some void completely unconscious of itself? Consider that from light, air, water, basic minerals within the crust of the earth, and the at least 3 billion-year-old information contained within the nucleus of one diploid zygote cell, the human body is formed, and within that body a soul capable of at least trying to comprehend its bodily and spiritual origins. Given the sheer insanity of our existential condition, and bodily incarnation as a whole, and considering that our earthly existence is partially formed from sunlight and requires the continual consumption of condensed sunlight in the form of food.
Over the past 18 years, our research center has investigated heart-brain interactions, how the heart and the brain communicate with each other, and how that affects consciousness and our perceptions. One of the things that we identified in our research was the state we now call coherence. And what we found was that when we're feeling positive emotions, like we're really appreciating the sunset, or really feeling love or compassion or care for someone, that the heart beats out a very different message. The heart generates by far the largest rhythmic electromagnetic field produced in the body. And what we've now found is that if we look at the spectrum analysis of the magnetic field radiated by the heart, that emotional information is actually encoded and modulating into those fields. So by learning to shift our emotions, that's changing the information we're encoding into the magnetic fields radiated by the heart, and that can impact those around us. We are fundamentally and deeply interconnected with each other. What we do individually really does count and matters.
Usually this focuses on what it can do for the individual, but now a Russian scientist says it can also benefit the world around us. RT's Sarah Firth looks at the science behind the claims.
Can you directly influence the world around you with just the power of your mind? Although it might sound far-fetched, a leading Russian scientist believes we can do exactly that. And using a device that photographs human energy fields, he's attempting to prove it.
We are developing idea that our consciousness is an active part of our material world. And with our consciousness we can directly influence our world.
To bridge our understanding of the unseen world of energy, scientific experiments are carried out using a technique called bioelectric photography. The assumption is that we're constantly emitting energy. Now, bioelectric photography works to capture this energy field that's seen as a light around the body, or what some people would call your aura. Discovered in the 1930s by Russian inventor Semyon Kirlian, he realized that stimulating a subject with a short electrical impulse, you get a burst of light, of photons and electrons around the subject.
It looks like aura, but I don't like this word because it has some metaphysical meaning. I prefer the word energy field.
The device itself photographs each finger individually, with different fingers responsible for different parts of the body, and feeds the information into a computer to interpret. One supposed benefit of this technique is early diagnosis of serious illnesses, like heart disease and cancer, but some who work in the mainstream medical profession remain unconvinced.
From the point of view of today's medicine, I don't think this can be used as medical evidence. And I would even go further and say that it's harmful rather than harmless, as it diverts people from the true causes of their illness and from the truly effective treatment.
And some of the claims in energy field research are even more far-reaching.
With our emotions, with our intentions, we can directly influence our environment, our space. Of course, this idea is absolutely new. That's why it has a lot of criticism still. It has a very important message for all of us, because we demonstrated that positive emotions, they have very strong influence. But the same and even more strong influence has negative emotions. But in one case, energy comes up, in another case, comes down. So it means that if we are developing in ourselves ability to create love, to create positive emotions. We change space around ourselves.
The idea that our personal energy can change the structure of the world around us is viewed by many with deep skepticism. But in the sphere of bioelectrophotography, work continues to find scientific proof for the theory.
Simply pump blood through our bodies. We can build a machine to do that. An artificial heart will pump the blood. But we now understand that our heart does much, much more than simply pump blood. That our heart literally has its own brain. It is called neural intelligence. And it is the heart intelligence that our ancestors understood that gives new meaning to the role of the human heart in our lives today. Our world, our physical world, is made of fields of energy, electrical fields and magnetic fields of energy. I remember as a scientist understanding the role of electrical and magnetic fields in our bodies and our world and thinking, if we were ever going to interact with our bodies, if we want to heal our bodies, we want to create peace in our families or our communities, we must speak to the fields that connect all things. We must find a meaningful language, a non-verbal language that communicates with the stuff that this world is made of. And this is precisely the essence of our most ancient and cherished spiritual traditions. It is called the great secret of our past. It's the secret of the traditions that are taught in the monasteries of the mountains of Tibet, little villages in the Andes Mountains of Bolivia and Peru, all through the American desert Southwest and North America, and many of the ancient Asian traditions, as different as they are from one another. The bottom line, the through line, is that they're all speaking about an experience, an inner experience that we have focused on our hearts that allows us to deal with the changes beyond our bodies in the world around us.
I wanted to tell you something that I found out last night that was really interesting. I'm not going to pretend like I know science because I'm just another guy that hears stuff and thinks, wow, this is interesting. Well, apparently, the human eyeball, the cornea of the human eye contains a compound that allows fruit flies to see magnetic fields. Now let me explain that a little bit. They took a compound out of the human cornea and they planted it into fruit flies. And the fruit flies were able to see magnetic fields and avoid them and fly according to where they were. What they think is that these particular compounds within the eye allow certain animals to see magnetic fields. You know how they always talk about how birds can sense, north and south and whatnot, and animals can, migrate to different places. Well, what they're starting to think is that the animals don't just sense these things, they actually see the fields. We don't understand exactly how it works, whether it's just a colored or if it's layered colors or, what it might be. The fact is that they think they can see that, they can literally see it, and that our eyes at one time were able to see magnetic fields, which may have helped ancient man to figure out better places to live, places not to go, places to go. In that case, the ancient man may have been able to literally see vortices within the earth and place their ancient buildings according to that. That would explain why so many of these places are on these ley lines and on these power centers. And I just found it just so fascinating to think, what if ancient man really could see magnetic fields? And now science is starting to show that might be true. So all I can say, Leave, is you can do your homework yourself and look at it. It's really interesting stuff. But it makes you wonder either A, could humans at one time see magnetic fields? Or B, are our eyes evolving to where we can see magnetic fields and we're just not quite there yet?
2015. So the Archon infestation of human consciousness is what's responsible for some of the mindless wars taking place. The sophisticated organization of this world government structure, in particular historically. I don't think just a few Rockefellers and Rothschilds alone by themselves just simply handing down knowledge from family member to abused sexually family member. These people that humans think are the elite are just At one point, they were sentient beings that were brought into this world that came under a form of control through a grooming process. And all they are frontmen on a global level. I'm talking also about Vladimir Putin. I'm talking also about the draconian leadership over China. Those systems don't represent those people in any way, shape, or form. We are dealing with an ongoing, archonic, mind parasite epidemic on the earth. Now, I don't believe in a collective shift in consciousness, but I do believe that through these solar flares and geomagnetic storms, there are energies that we can access and we can use, if we so choose. Many people do not understand these celestial changes taking place, and instead, they don't look into it. They just look at what they believe is the physical world, what they can smell, what they can see, what they can taste, what they can hear, what they can feel. They are limited in the five senses. And most people themselves don't know how their energy field is affected by other things. Archons possess, manipulate, trick, adulterate, hypnotize, and program human beings with weak magnetic fields. I recommend the lecture by Manly P. Hall where he talks about the health of the human aura or field and how certain actions that we take or can take can lead to either a stronger or weaker magnetic field. The planet has a protective magnetic field, as does human beings. Certain actions potentially taking place on the Earth could cause perhaps holes in the atmosphere. Other changes taking place in the solar system and with the core of our Earth affects the magnetic field, and thus we have other anomalies like holes opening and closing that are invisible, and scientists are sending up satellites trying to understand this. But do people think also about their own human magnetic field and what happens when you engage in certain activities, perhaps hurting others, hurting yourself, abusing substances, or abusing other things, or abusing alcohol, or abusing your mind, letting your mind be adulterated by the mainstream media, by an excess of something, obsessing on physical pleasure, whatever it is, all the time, being stuck in the flesh itself. I don't think that makes one stronger. So these lifestyles that some people are living, where it's all based in external beauty and it's all based in physical pleasure, these are things that lead to a weak human magnetic field. And that leads to cords being established. That leads to people being under control. You don't have a happy field of energy when you walk into a bar, or when you walk into a strip club, or when you walk into a particular place of excess. You may walk in at a moment when people are rolling and they're high as hell, but for every ultra high there is a crash. And by the way, I do support the responsible use of medical marijuana and the responsible use of certain substances. What I caution against is taking things to extent.
And whether they do good or bad with that technology. We've all seen the stories of the RFIDs, but this, although it may look similar at first glance, it's not. It's something completely different, and it opens up the opportunity for humans to do something that most cannot naturally do. And if we are able to do this, they're surely going out of the way to take away from people's natural ability to use this sixth sense, so to speak. Now what we have here is Dr. Denis Makarov and his team. They have developed an electronic skin that has a magnetosensory system. Okay, and that's key. That magnetosensory system is what helps the recipient get this sixth sense and able to perceive the presence of static or dynamic magnetic fields. Now these are ultra-thin magnetic sensors with extraordinary mechanical robustness that are ideally suited to be worn. You can crumple them up like a piece of paper, they say, and they will still be good. And it is hoped that they can use this for navigation and in robotics. But check this out. It could lead to wearable, imperceptible magnetosensitive skin that will enable proximity detection with your hand, navigation, and touchless control. All of this in the palm of your hand, this ability through this technology and this sensor. These are some of the cool things that can come out of the tech world and really change the game. Can you imagine messing around and having some fun with one of these things and being able to move objects around you? It'd be pretty cool, wouldn't it?
How do our bodies create electricity? The short answer is chemical energy. To understand why, let's look at the long answer. What most people think of as electricity is simply the movement of an electrical charge. To move, and as a result use the potential charge, we need an energy source. Some of the most common are hydroelectric, nuclear, solar and wind. Technological advances have allowed us to harness these sources, giving us wonders like computers and vibrating smartphones. The energy created by chemicals is due to the reactions of the atoms and molecules present. All of the elements we take in our bodies, like oxygen, sodium, potassium, and calcium, have a specific electrical charge, meaning they have a specific number of electrons, protons, and neutrons. Those specific charges, whether positive or negative, react to the charges of adjacent molecules. This reaction is what creates the energy needed to create electricity. When we eat or drink, the large molecules within our food get broken down by digestion, creating similar molecules. Those smaller molecules can be used by our cells to do work. This process is called cellular respiration. All of those molecules and elements in our bodies have the potential to create electrical impulses. Arguably, the most commonly mentioned electrical current within our bodies is the heart rhythm. Hearts contain, within them, a grouping of cells known as your sinoatrial node, or SA node. These cells within the SA node, sometimes called the pacemaker of the heart, contain electrolytes both inside and outside of the cells. The most common electrolytes within the body are sodium, potassium, calcium, magnesium, phosphorus, and chloride. Sodium and calcium generally reside outside of the SA node cells. Potassium generally lies within them. The cell membrane acts as a barrier between these electrolytes. Pressure within the bloodstream allows sodium to enter the cell, causing potassium to leave it. Less potassium leaves the cell than sodium entering it. The result is a continually growing positive charge. When the charge reaches a certain point, calcium channels in the cell membrane open up and allow for calcium to enter. This makes the interior of the cell extremely positive compared to the outside of the cell, known as an action potential. Once that potential reaches a certain point, it has enough power to discharge down the nerves of the heart. This electricity causes the muscles to contract and your heart to beat. Electrolytes crossing cell membranes, creating electrical discharges, is one of the countless ways the body uses the food we eat to create energy. And
been experimenting with electricity, obviously, and the electromagnetic forces. And just considering the human body and the electromagnetic force that we give off, thinking about things like the electromagnetic consciousness theories and just how we can take advantage of the EMF fields of our body for new purposes. So I put together a series of experiments using this electromagnetic wave detector. So if you stick this near your power outlet, you're going to get a reading off of it. And then if you stick it up against the lights, you get different kind of readings. So you needed a EMF source, basically, that would emit electromagnetic force, so that I could, test what's going on as it, passes up to and through the body and so on. So I picked a plasma ball. So plasma balls are pretty commonly available. You can get them in these kind of party gift store type places, and essentially what they are is a kind of a self-grounding Tesla coil, essentially. But if you want to think about it another way, you could just think of the original name given to the plasma ball by Tesla, of course, who also invented it. And he called it the inert gas discharge tube. And so essentially it's basically, it's kind of like an open air transformer and a current oscillator that produces an electricity discharge. And when it passes the bulb,
that contains the neon and argon gas. The neon and argon gas are electrically excited and they illuminate, so you can see the kind of, basically you can see the electrical forces manifesting visually inside of the plasma ball. So the first test that I'm doing here, you can see I have placed the electromagnetic frequency detector and the EMF source. It's a little bit far, about a 6-inch distance from one another, and I put my hand in the middle just to see if my hand would be interfering with the electromagnetic frequency as it went from the source to the measurement. And the results were pretty conclusive. So what I decided to do is just use a bunch of other materials, test a bunch of other materials to see if something else would have a very similar effect on the frequency. Some things might absorb or block or interfere at EMF frequency more than others, naturally. And yet, to some degree, you can see the results here that definitely you did have an interruption of the signal with other materials, but interestingly enough, my body was a lot more of a disturbance to the EMF field, or I guess emission, than some of these other materials.